I always say this is an interesting knife because every time you open it, it kind of takes away, it shaves a little bit of your fingernail away from your from your finger. This is not a US made knife, this is a Taiwan made knife. And don't let that fool you guys, don't let that fool you whatsoever. The quality on this guy is top tier. Although with this one you have a good indentation there, the spidey hole is a little bit smaller, so that helps quite a bit and it doesn't stick out as much. So as far as opening, you got the flipper right here. So it is a flipper, which is again very interesting that you can flip open the Spyderco because most Spydercos, right, don't have a flipper. Hello and what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Miguel and you are watching Miguel EDC, where we talk everything EDC gear. Today we're going to be reviewing this guy right here. Boom, the Spyderco Smock. This guy has been a tank of a knife. I've been so happy to EDC this thing. I kind of fell in love with this thing the second I saw it, and I just can't wait to share my experience with you guys. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's get into it. Here we go. Let's start with a quick measurement. Just get the measurements out of the way here. Let's see what we got going on with this guy. Right off the bat, total length, this guy comes in at exactly 8 inches overall length, 8 inches total. The blade is going to be 3.5 length, but the actual cutting edge is going to be exactly 3 inches, right? So we got some exact measurements here with this guy. And as far as the handle goes, that handle is going to be about 4.5 inches total. All right, so there are your measurements right there. What do we got going on with this guy, this amazing, beautiful Spyderco looking thing here? So this is a Taiwan made Spyderco. It is a Smock design. I don't know if you guys recall from the unboxing, I had no clue what that was all about right there. It also has this ghost looking gear right here. I'm not very Spyderco savvy to be able to tell exactly what that gear is or what it means, but I'm sure I'm going to do my research by the time I do the review and let you guys know what that's all about. But yeah, I am happy to report that logo right there is the Smoke. Bruh. Not Smoke. See, that keeps happening to me every time I try to say this knife's name. It's not Smoke, it's the Smock. Smock. All right, and that is the Smock design logo right there. I got a chance to research that. Smock designs, I mean, the knives are beautiful. They all sort of have the same design language with the 3 holes, sort of the savage looking blade right here. It is just an amazing, I guess you could call it a Warncliffe, sort of. Yeah, Warncliffe design, somewhat of a drop point. You guys be the judge. I'm not a blade shape design guru, but you kind of get the idea. But yeah, Smock designs are beautiful. This is a collaboration here between Smock and Spyderco, and I mean, they got it done. They did an amazing job here with this guy. Let's do a quick size comparison just to give you guys an idea. Here it is compared to the brother, the Spyderco PM2, another Spyderco knife, of course, very popular, very well known. Here it is the Para 3 as well. Yeah, this guy's gonna be in the medium to large range, right? There's gonna be a large knife right there for sure, no doubt about that, right? It's gonna be probably just as large, yeah, just as large as a PM2, and is a very slim, very elegant design. I often say that this is my gentleman knife right here. If I had to gentleman carry some sort of knife right now out of my whole arsenal collection of knives, this is it right here for the time being. I mean, this thing is just so elegant, so good looking, very slim. All right, that being said, let's compare it to some other knives as well, just to kind of give you guys an idea. Let's check next to the Demko brothers. Here's the Demko 80-20.5 on the shark's foot blade. Here's the clip point, right? Yeah, this guy's gonna be just a little bit longer, right? Again, we have more handle. The handle is a little bit longer right there. Yeah, if you really take a look at it right there, that's what we're working with. Here it is next to the Sencut brothers, right? What we got going on from Sencut, we got the Saxy and we have the Crawley right here. So yeah, very comparable, since again, both of these are also medium to large knives. Probably the Crawley in lengthwise is gonna be the closest, right? The Crawley has a longer handle than the Saxy does, right? So that sort of also gives you a good idea right there. Boom. And last but not least, of course, we got the Ontario Wrap Model 1 and Wrap Model 2. I gotta say, up until this point, there are very few knives that actually match the Ontario Wrap Model 1 on how big, right, this knife is. The Smock comes very close. It is a little bit shorter in handle. It is a little bit shorter in blade as well. Of course, the Wrap Model 2 is the, smaller brother, so it's definitely gonna be a medium to small knife. But at least, if you have one of these knives, it kind of sort of gives you an idea what we're dealing with right there. This beauty right here is rocking a CPM S30V, right, which is an excellent steel. The steel technology is getting better and better over the years, so yes, there are better steels out there, but if you go back a couple of years, right, this was top-notch, very top-tier steel, and still is to this day. This thing is so sharp. I can't wait to show you guys on the paper cutting test in a little bit how sharp this guy still is, even after all the EDC tasks that I've been throwing at it over a couple of months by now. So we have, again, that very interesting Smock looking blade design, very Warncliffe looking, sheep's foot looking design right there. Of course, you got the Spidey hole because, you know, you got to have the Spidey hole. That's what makes a Spyderco knife, right? So you have that going on right there. Of course, you got the Spider logo on this side, Spyderco as well. On the other side, you have the Smock logo, and it says Taichung, Taiwan, which is where this guy's made. This is not a US made knife. This is a Taichung, Taiwan made knife. And don't let that fool you guys. Don't let that fool you whatsoever. The quality on this guy is top tier. You know, just because it's made overseas, it does not hinder the quality and the performance on this guy whatsoever. The Taichung factory is probably up there next to the US and Japan Spyderco factory. So you're gonna get a solid, very pristine, high quality knife, no doubt about that. So what do we got going on for the handle? We have a G10 going on right here. This is sort of like what they try to do here is they try to do a carbon fiber sort of texture to it, even though it is G10. You may like or dislike that. I know some people are very on the fence. You know, if it's gonna be carbon fiber, make it be real carbon fiber, not G10 wannabe carbon fiber. But I'm fine with it. I like it for what it is. I know there are some really nice, sweet grenade looking scales and titanium scales. This is one of those knives you could really customize the way you want. So what do we have for opening on this guy? Right, you see this button right here. You may automatically think it is a button lock, but it isn't. That button actually works the same as the compression lock, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. So as far as opening, you got the flipper right here. So it is a flipper, which is again very interesting that you can flip open the Spyderco, because most Spydercos, right, don't have a flipper, right? So that's something that this guy has going for it. The fact that you can flip open here. Of course, you could do the thumb opening right there with the hole, right? You sort of have to kind of push your thumb up, and that gets the job done right there. Right, and then of course my favorite right here, boom, you got the opening right there. I always say this is an interesting knife because every time you open it, it kind of takes away, it shaves a little bit of your fingernail away from your from your finger. But I mean, yeah, you should have plenty of fingernail left at the end. It's not really that bad, but you kind of see the fingernail shavings just flying, right, which is kind of interesting, kind of funny. Alright, so the button is only used for closing the knife, right? So again, just very similar to the compression lock on some of the other Spydercos, the Para 3, the PM2 that we have seen. This button right here sort of does the same function, right? But instead you're just pushing the liner back and then that closes the blade, right? So it's not a button lock per se. The button is only used to release the blade. You are able to open the blade independent of the button. And again, this is just another version of their compression lock on the opposite end, if you will. And then you're just pushing the button to release, right, the blade and close it. Right, so that's what we have going on for this guy. Let's do a quick carry profile on this guy. Let's keep it on the right hand. So here it is next to the Ontario Wrap Model 1, right? It is a Wrap Model 1. It's going to be just a little bit thicker right there. Here it is next to the Ontario Wrap Model 2, and the Model 2 of course is going to be a little bit thinner. Obviously it is a smaller knife if I can keep my hands from shaking. Here is the Sencut Crawley. All right, that's going to be a little bit thicker right there. All right, the Crawley right here, that's going to be the same, right? Same for the Crawley and the Saxy, right? They have liners and they have micarta scales, so they're a little bit thicker. Demco 80 20.5, regardless of blade, right? They are going to be a little bit slimmer, right? Just because of the liners with the Gribery scales right there. And last but not least, we have the Para 3, right? Very comparable to the Para 3, right? Might be very, very similar right there. And of course, the PM2 is going to be no different, I'm sure. It's going to be on that same ballpark right there. All right, that gives you a good idea there. What does it look like in your pocket, right? When it's folded, right? How much room does it take in your pocket? Well, I'm happy to report that it takes a lot less room than, let's say, your PM2 or your Para 3, right? Look at that. By comparison, you still have the Spidey hole, although with this one, you have a good indentation there. The Spidey hole is a little bit smaller, so that helps quite a bit, and it doesn't stick out as much. As I mentioned earlier, it's a very narrow profile, which is nice. Obviously, the PM2 and Para 3 are going to stick out quite a bit because the Spyder hole is so much bigger, right? But there it is right there. Good comparison side by side. Next to the Demco brothers here, regardless of the blade shape. Also, the Demcos are going to be quite wider right there, as you can see, because the blade does stick out a substantial amount from the handle when folded. And again, the Smock right here is still winning with that slim design right there. All right, next to the Sencut brothers, the Saxy on top, the Crawley at the bottom. Probably the one of these two that's going to come the closest will be the Crawley. Right? The Crawley does have that very slim, narrow design, whereas the Saxy, because of the blade shape, right, is going to be just a little bit wider than the Smock. Well, you guys be the judge right there. And last but not least, of course, we have the Ontario Wrap Model 1 and Ontario Wrap Model 2. The Wrap Model 1, of course, is going to be a behemoth, compared to the Model 2. And yeah, they're both somewhat pretty slim. They have a very oval design to them, right? Probably compares more to the Rap Model 2 than the Rap Model 1 just warps the smocks right there, as you can see. But again, it's just to give you a good idea. These are very popular knives. Let's get a quick blade stock thickness on this guy. On the thickest portion, this guy's going to be 0.11, right? 0.11 inches as compared to, right? I just want to point this out, as compared to 0.14 inches on the PM2 and Para 3. So it's a little bit slimmer, also on the blade, right? Something to keep in mind right there. So once again, that was 0.11 inches, right, on the blade stock thickness. At the very tip though, let's see, what do we got going on here for the very tip? It might not be, there you go, 0.02 inches at the very tip. So I know the PM2 and the Para 3, they both drop to a 0.01 inches. This one, I like that it's not as you still have a very solid, thick blade all throughout, right? For most people who are concerned that the PM2 and Para 3 have a very, very slim or skinny point end, it's not reinforced, it might break the tip at some point. Obviously, you're not going to be doing any prying or anything crazy like that with your knife, but if you're looking for that extra strength on the blade tip, I think the Smock has a better, stronger blade tip than the PM2 or Para 3. All right, you guys be the judge of that right there. You can clearly see how much thicker the blade on the Smock is all throughout compared to the PM2 right there. All right, check out the blade right there. Check out how aligned that is, right? There is no concerns of that blade being skewed one way or the other. It is dead center. You guys be the judge of that. Let me know in the comments. All right, let's also get a quick weight on this guy, right? So for comparison purposes, let's compare here. The PM2 was 3.8 ounces and the Para 3 was 3.4 ounces, right? This guy, to me, feels a little bit heavy. I want to say maybe 3.8 or 3.9, right? 3.7. So it's 0.1 ounces less than the PM2, all right? So it's still right there. Not too bad, even though it feels like it has a substantial weight to it. Feels premium, feels quality, right? One more time for scientific purposes. There it is, 3.7 ounces of weight on the Spyderco Smock. All right, let's address the elephant in the room. This guy comes in at over around $200, so it's probably about $30 or $20 with tax included more than the PM2. Right? It is about $30 or so more than the Para 3, and I probably leave these in frame here since we're going to be doing quite a bit of comparing back and forth. But yeah, what are you getting with this guy that you're not getting with the other guys? Well, this guy is unique, right? Again, the design is very unique in the Spyderco line because it is a Smock collaboration, right? So the DNA here is very Smock looking. Of course, you still have somewhat of Spyderco's DNA as a result. Right off the bat, I can tell some people are going to be very happy that the lanyard tube is a lot smaller on this guy as compared to, let's say, the PM2 or Para 3. So you got that going for you. I want to say the quality, the fit and finish, it is no less than both the Para 3 and PM2. If anything, maybe a level higher. Other than that, I mean, you kind of want to enjoy this design here for what it is. You have some jimping going on right here, which is very different, right? This jimping is very different than what you typically get with Spyderco, right? You kind of have 3 different indentations right there, whereas with the other ones, the PM2 here, for example, you have very small different indentations all throughout. That's something to keep in mind there. For some people, they would have preferred real carbon fiber versus pretend to be carbon fiber. For me, that's not an issue. We're going to be doing the hardware check here in a moment just to see what we got going on with this guy. But you also have the 3-hole design right there, right? Again, this one is a little bit of a better design, in my opinion, to the compression lock. If you haven't seen the reviews, by the way, on the PM2 and Para 3, check those out. One of the things that I complain a lot, or not necessarily complain, but that I wanted to point out with the PM2 and Para 3 is that after using it for a while, right, this compression lock is going to cause this to your index finger, right? And again, you get used to it over time, you know, that kind of, you know, you get used to that, no issues. I think my index finger is used to that, right? After opening and closing the knife so many times, right, that compression lock takes a good stab at your finger right there. But with the, you know, different approach here to the compression lock, making it on the opposite end and making it so you can push a button to close the blade, that really changes everything, right? It makes it so that it is so much more easier to deploy, also so much easier and less compromising to close. And yeah, it's nowhere near, I don't think you would have to intentionally want to press a button because it sort of kind of falls in between your index and your thumb when you are pressing or getting a good grip on the handle there. So I think you are going to be pretty good as far as that goes. So honestly, if I'm really being honest with you guys, I would prefer this version of the compression lock over what comes in the PM2 and Para 3 and so on, right? That being said, let's do a quick hardware check on this guy. By the way, the tools that I use are very affordable. They're going to be linked down below in the description. They're going to be part of the Spyderco tool set. It has all the drill bits you could possibly need to take apart your knives and maintenance your knives, and even so many other things around the house. Links down below. Check them out. There are affiliate links that support the channel at no extra cost to you. I want to say my guess with this guy is probably going to be T8 on the pivot and T6 on the handles, which honestly might be a little bit disappointing, whereas you get T8 in the handle and T10 in the pivot with the other Spydercos. But let's test that. Let's start with T6. Let's see what we have here. Yes, T6 here on the handle right there, right? That is T6. And then we have T6 on the pocket clip as well, which is, by the way, is aftermarket, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then as far as the pivot goes, that pivot is going to be a T8, right? T8. Wish it was a T10 like on the other Spydercos, but yes, that's going to be T8 on both ends, right? Something to keep in mind there. You have T8 on the pivot, and then you have T6 everywhere else. Of course, you have to do the customary paper cutting test like we do in every review video here in the channel. And by the way, this guy has been EDC'd for a while now to see how much of an edge it has retained. Let me know in the comments, right? Rate it from 1 through 10, 10 being the sharpest. Here we go. Without further ado, boom, look at that cut. Wow. Did I tell you guys this guy was sharp? Look at that. All right, that's where the money's at right there. Look how sharp this thing is. There's no compromises there whatsoever. I don't want to jinx it, but there's it's not catching anywhere. The fact that the blade is so long, it helps with those very slicey cuts right there. Starts right here and finishes at the very tip. Boom. All right, does this guy need to be resharpened? I don't necessarily think so. I think this guy has quite a lot of an edge still to give. So I kind of developed this own way of deploying the knife where if you kind of move your wrist down and push the button, that's the only way to sort of open it, because you can't open it right like you typically would open a button lock. I give you a perfect example right here. The Crawley is a button lock, so I could open it like this with the button, right? Flick of the wrist all day, every day, right? Same deal with, let's say, the Civivi Elementum button lock, right? Obviously that's a button only deployment, right? So you have to use a button to deploy. This one is not a button lock in that sense. You know, I can't push the button and open it that way. So the only way I found after just playing around with this guy that you can open it is just moving your wrist down like this. Make sure you don't let go of the knife, and then just pushing the button, right? Just like that. So I know it's not ideal. I mean, it's just kind of just a fun way to deploy it. If you own one of these, test it out. Let me know if you're able to pull that off. And of course, you have the flipper, right? Can't go wrong with a flipper opening. This thing is solid. It does take a substantial amount of push with your index finger, but once you kind of get the feel for it, then you know about how much pressure to apply, right? And you get to get that over and over and over and over again. You have some very nice and thick spacers right here going on. This guy is it's not necessarily as milled as some of the other guys, right? The only milling going on this guy is going to be those 3 holes on both ends, right? So the liner on this end has the 3 holes. The liner on this end also has the 3 holes, and you could see that right there. I know it looks a little bit kind of filthy in there. That's how long this knife has been in my pocket. That sort of gives you an idea how much I've been carrying it. Sort of needs a little bit of a cleaning right there, if I'm being honest, but you get the idea. Now, of course, this guy has the aftermarket pocket clip, just like with all the other Spydercos. I sort of had to do that. It was a non-negotiable for me. The reason being, right, if I show you the default Spyderco clip, right, and by the way, you can do tip down carry on this guy. The holes aren't there for tip down carry, so if that's the way you prefer to carry your knife, this is not going to work on this knife, whereas the other guys do have, right, they do have the holes on both ends, right? The Smock does not. All right, so yeah, the pocket clip situation here looks something like this. If I were to keep the original pocket clip right there, right, about this much of the knife would be showing, right? There you go, about that much of the knife would be showing right there. Whereas with the aftermarket pocket clip, by the way, links in the description for this guy if you want to pick one up for yourself. Yeah, about only that tiny little bit of the knife is going to be showing right there. All right, big difference right there, right? Check them out side by side if you want. But yeah, it is absolutely worth the investment, and you don't have to go crazy. I think these were like $8 and change for these pocket clips, right? So again, around $200 for an EDC of a knife, right? This one made in Taichung, Taiwan. And I mean, you're probably wondering, you know, what do I get with this guy over the other guys? And And to tell you the truth, I mean, if you're tight for a budget, you're trying to get into Spyderco's, probably this Smock would not be the first one I would recommend you to start with. I would recommend you to start with maybe the PM2 or Para 3, since they are slightly a little bit more affordable. Why you would want to go with the Smock over the other Spyderco's? Well, because it's different, right? It doesn't have the same dead bird aesthetics as the other guys right there, so that sort of helps a little bit as well. It also looks unique, and if you follow Smock knives and you like that style of knife, I mean, this is going to be a solid, good way to go right there. So how are the ergos on this guy? The ergos are beautiful right here. You can sort of grip right here with your index finger on this indentation right there, so sort of grip like that for your forward cuts, for your backwards cuts right here. This guy has a huge, and I mean a huge, sharpening choil as compared to zero sharpening choil on the other Spyderco's PM2 and Para 3. And sort of, you could also, I guess, argue that you could use that as a forward choke. Yes, you sort of can, right? So you want to be very careful, but it is possible to use it that way. Of course, you can have this much of the handle sticking out if you do that, or if you do the regular grip, right? There's still plenty of room for your whole hand. I have medium size hands, not too large, not too small, right? And again, like the jimping right up here, that comes very, very helpful as well. And then same for the backwards cuts and things like that. So also the other Spyderco's here are going to be a flat grind all the way through on the blade, whereas this guy has sort of like a hollow grind, right? So right here, right, sort of you have this flat section of the blade here, and then just a hollow grind right there, and that makes for a very sexy, very attractive looking blade right there. So again, that's something else to consider when picking up this guy over the other ones. This one is a hollow grind versus a full flat grind on the other guys. Hey, one thing that I'll tell you that I like for sure is the very slim design for me, right? Like this does it for me. I mentioned it earlier, very gentleman looking, very high end, very quality, substantial weight to it. That's just a slim design, right? These guys, when they're folded, right, you look at that, look at the difference right there. That Spidey hole just makes it so much wider of a knife in the pocket. That's something to consider. For me, that's not an issue at all, but you might want to consider that. All right, in conclusion, would I recommend this guy? Yes, I would recommend this guy 100%. This is one of my favorite Spyderco's. So if at some point my Spyderco collection grows a little bit and I do a top Spyderco knives, this is definitely going to be in there, just because I love this design a lot. Personally, it speaks to me. I'm attracted to it. It's just so savage looking, right? I love it. I love it. Every single thing about this knife, personally. You're going to have a solid cutting edge with this guy, no doubt about that. The blade is going to hold an edge for a while. Should be pretty decent to sharpen when the time comes as well. The materials are very nice and high quality as well for the price. Could it be maybe a little bit more affordable? Perhaps, right? Perhaps. I'm there with you. The $200 was a little bit of a hard pillow to swallow at the beginning, right? But then once I pulled the trigger, it was definitely worth it, right? I'll give you an example. This is no longer the most expensive knife in my collection right now. I paid almost $300 for this guy right here, the exoskeleton from Riyadh, and this guy is a full-on gravity knife in titanium with black micarta, right? So I mean, there are knives that you're going to be willing to pay a little bit more just because you like what they bring to the table, the materials, the design, things like that. By the way, I'm EDCing this guy so I can do a review here in the near future. That being said, guys, if I missed anything, let me know in the comments. If you have any questions on anything that you would like to be answered, please let me know down below. I'll be hanging out in the comments. If there's anything I can answer for you, or perhaps I missed in the review, I'll be happy to answer those questions for you down there. That being said, guys, by the time you are done watching this video, right, if you made it to the end, by the way, you're the real MVP. Chances are the review from the Riyadh XOM is going to be ready, right? If that's the case, I'm gonna put a card right here for you. Go ahead and check it out. Let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for sticking to the end, guys. You are all the real MVPs. I'll see you next time. Take care and have a wonderful day. Peace.